And the lines are open now.
Michael Reid on LMFM.
Now, Fianna Fáil Senator Thomas Byrne joins me. Good morning to you, Senator Byrne. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning to advise women who've survived the childbirth procedure, Symphysiotomy, to avail of the government's redress scheme, which was announced in the last week. I have to say that you're not the only politician who's advising this. I think all of the local Oireachtas members, bar Jerry Adams, are advocating that women do enter into this scheme. But as a solicitor, you've got a legal opinion on this, and it would appear to be odds with the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission, with a statement from the Chief Commissioner, Emily Logan, being published this morning, expressing concern about the scheme and the state meeting its international human rights obligations. It says that it is concerned about the time limit that is imposed for the women to apply to the scheme, which is before the 5th of December, or in exceptional circumstances 20 days after that, on the 14th of January. They're also concerned about how this will pose problems in the women getting independent legal advice, and they're equally concerned about waiving their legal rights if they do avail of the scheme and accept the compensation that is on offer. What do you say to women who are trying to balance the advice coming on both sides of this?
Well, I think that this whole issue is a balancing issue, and I'll just say first, Michael, while I am a solicitor, I'm not in practice at the moment. In case anyone thinks it's a conflict of interest, I'm not touting for business or anything like that. I really have been talking to many of these women over many years, and know some of them very, very well. And I've come to the conclusion in a balancing exercise myself that this scheme is the best that's available for the women there at the moment. And although I have to say I do share some of the concerns of the Human Rights Commission, and indeed two of the three, some of their main points don't directly relate to the redress scheme. They do raise some issues about the redress scheme, and we would like the time to be longer for people to consider it. But I did check with a practicing solicitor in this field last night, who told me that they would be able to give legal advice on such a scheme within the time frame. I think this is a balancing exercise from a number of factors. I mean, first of all, as the Walsh report says, time is against many of these women in this situation. Many of them are over 90 at this stage, and if you're taking a legal case, you have so many difficulties taking that case. First of all, we have the whole issue of the statute of limitations that has been discussed, but also if you do look at one of the cases that was successful, the lady in Dundalk, I'm not going to name names on the radio, but I suppose these are well-known cases. It took, I think, 10 years for that case to come through, and as I understand it, there were two appeals to the Supreme Court as part of that. And any legal case that's taken, there's always a risk that something will go wrong, or that something won't happen, or if somebody were to die during the middle of the case, there's so much uncertainty. I think this scheme, and notwithstanding the concerns that have been raised, does actually balance all of that and give the women a chance to get a substantial redress for the wrong that has been done to them. And I think they would be best advised, having sought maybe their own solicitor's legal advice first. I mean, I have no difficulty with that, but in my opinion, this scheme offers a lot. And I have to say, up to relatively recently, and particularly with the Neary report and the whole issue of the Michael Neary cases, there was definitely cross-party support for these schemes, and I worked on a cross-party basis in the last Dáil in relation to some of the women who'd been left out, and in fairness, this government took that on board. This process was actually started by Mary Harney, and the last government has now been brought to a conclusion. I'm grateful that Minister Varadkar has brought this to a conclusion on the redress side of it, and there are other aspects of this too that still probably need to be dealt with. So I think that it is important that these cases, now they are described as historic in some of the reports, and that is true, but they're not historic for women who continue to suffer. We understand that, but that does present huge difficulties for any legal action that people are taking.
But are the proposed awards enough? The awards that are proposed are between 50 and 150, 50, 100 and 150,000, three different rates depending on the circumstances. cases, but would women not do better going through the courts where they may receive 200, 250, 300, 350,000 euro?
Well, there was one case that went through the courts, but the difference with that case was, and there was some more damages given. I mean, first of all, that was a case of a symphysiotomy post-childbirth. There was no need for the symphysiotomy in that case, and there were still huge effects. But that was actually within the statute of limitations. So the person only found out about it in recent years and was within the statute of limitations. So that wasn't an issue, first of all. But secondly, that person was dragged through the courts. I mean, there's various parties involved, possibly the state, possibly religious orders, possibly doctors that are long deceased, possibly insurers that maybe in some cases may not want to insure. That was a massive legal battle, and I have to say I was delighted that she won, but there was a huge battle there. And as the Walsh report says, time is against many of these women. They simply don't have 10 years, many of them, to go through the courts and to take that chance. And even with a case that would be considered open and shut, say a recent traffic accident or some relatively minor case like that goes through the courts, there's always about a 20% chance that something will go wrong, or that case won't be successful, or just something will happen that's not expected. And these cases, there are so much more. Medical negligence cases traditionally are fought very, very hard by insurers. So here there's a scheme that the government is offering. Yes, my own instincts were that the awards were slightly low for the damage, but actually talking to a number of lawyers actually about this, they felt that actually they would be happy enough with them when you take into account that balance and that lack of need to go to the courts to get redress, that lack of risk, because anyone who goes to the High Court in a medical negligence case, Michael, is taking on a huge risk for themselves and indeed their families, because while the case dies with you, if you were to die, the legal fees don't.
Are the offers mealy-mouthed, though? Would women have a right to feel that they should reject these offers as a matter of principle because it's an ex gratia scheme, the state isn't accepting any liability?
Yes, I mean, and that goes to the nub of the problem. I mean, the state may be liable or it may not be, and that would be for a court to decide, but it would be for the women to prove that in court. A doctor presumably would also be liable. Some of those doctors are dead. Insurers may not cover it. I mean, you may win your case and then there may be no money to meet it. There are so many complications, but any case of this that's taken must be proved by the person taking the case. So this scheme, the state is offering this ex gratia payment. That's one aspect of it. The Human Rights Commission talks about, and indeed from the UN report, talks about the need for a prompt, independent, thorough investigation into this. And I think that would be, there have been some, obviously a huge amount of groundwork done, but I think that's a separate side to it then, that can also be dealt with.
Emily Logan has called for that again, as well as a process that would allow for people to be prosecuted.
Absolutely. Yeah,
and you'd agree with that?
I would consider that separate to this scheme that's there now, because there are aspects of this. I mean, the Irish courts, I mean, it may be a bit blunt, Michael, but the Irish courts in civil actions offer very little other than money. If you want to get justice, you must look to see that people will be prosecuted. If you want to find out exactly what happened, there must be an investigation. I concur with what the Human Rights Commission is saying in relation to that. But I think in the best interest of the women, they should sit down with their advisors. They should talk to the groups. I work very closely with Patient Focus on a number of issues, and I commend the work that they've done, Michael, and some of the women involved that I know personally were named by in the Walsh report. In fact, local radio was named as helping to expose this, Michael, so I'd like to pay tribute to, I am assuming they mean LMFM, for you highlighting this issue over many, many years, and all of the groups who've worked with the survivors of this. And I know there are different opinions from some groups, but I'm just giving my opinion based on my experience and from talking to people, that really they should look at this very, very seriously, and I would be encouraging them to look at, because the courts is whatever the rights and wrongs, but the courts are not an option for most people in complicated and difficult cases. It's just too much of a risk for somebody. Well, and here there's a scheme which is without risk. Yes, the time limits are short. Yes, the amounts are maybe slightly below what I instinctively thought that maybe they should be, but they are substantial amounts. You're talking 50,000 for somebody who has symphysiotomy without any ill effects, and 100,000 for somebody who has symphysiotomy who can show this higher degree of pain, disability and discomfort.
And And many of the women who qualify live in our locality, which is why we've given so much time on the radio to covering this particular subject.
There were nearly 400 symphysiotomies in the Lourdes, and there are some in the Lourdes carry them on, as you know, for a much longer period of time.
Is the claim that if you apply to this scheme within the time frame, the 5th of December, you can sort out the other matters afterwards, correct? And is it also correct that...
What other matters? That the need for an investigation and the need for perpetrators to be punished?
No. In terms of fulfilling the criteria, but that if your application is received before the 5th of December, issues such as medical records or getting the appropriate legal advice can be dealt with after that date.
The most important thing is to get the application in.
And is it also correct to say that payments will be prompt?
Yes, payments will be prompt, and I certainly will be following that up to make sure that actually does happen, because that's often an issue in any court case, that somebody wins a case and they're waiting for payment. And what could happen if someone went to court in some of these cases, they could possibly win a case and there would be no insurance to cover the money, there would be no person there or assets there to pay out. So that's people often win court cases, especially in complicated areas. We've seen cases where people have won cases against developers who didn't build housing estates properly, and the companies have gone to the wall and they don't actually get the money that they've been awarded. Okay. So we will be following. I will be following that aspect up, but certainly with the government. The burden of proof in this is relatively low. I mean, many hospital records have been destroyed. There are records of operations, generally speaking. But if somebody can show medically from a doctor's report, and I know some of the groups have been getting these reports together already, but once you can show medically that you had the symphysiotomy, that will be enough. So that is way less than would be required for a court case.
Yes, and it does say that in the terms of reference as well. We have to leave it there for the moment, though, but thank you.
I hope that's helpful anyway to listeners, and I certainly respect all of the groups involved with this, and there are differences of opinion. I'm just giving mine, and I hope it's taken well as a member of the opposition, because I don't normally come on supporting the government or a government scheme. So in that light, I hope people listen to it carefully.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Fianna Fáil Senator Thomas Byrne.
Michael Reid on LMFM is heard live from 9 a.m. weekdays, and this is a repeat broadcast of the programme.